The idea of naturalized Canadians is once again a topic during collective bargaining negotiations. If it's adopted by the league and players association, how will that affect athletes born and raised in Canada?
I want to preface this entire conversation first and foremost by saying I'm actually in favor of naturalized Canadians to some extent. If we can expand the ratio, if we can provide designated spots for them, I think it behooves the league to have a rule where if you spend, I don't know, for me, it would be 5 years in the same city. Now, all of a sudden, you have this unique status that incentivizes teams to keep you around. I am in favor of that. But what's being pushed right now, and details are scarce, but there are people around the league that are hearing things that this is a drastic cut that people in powerful positions are pushing to the ratio. It could have a devastating impact on Canadian talent. Even what they wanted to push last year, where they brought it down and they thought they could have 3 veteran Americans starting in place of Canadians and on the game day ratio, so bringing it down from 21 players to just 18, that's a significant cut. And I had people tell me this week that if a change like that had been enacted, someone like John Cornish would not have made the roster. He would have been cut by the Calgary Stampeders. We're talking about a Hall of Fame player, one of the best to ever do it. And because he started out his career as a bottom of the roster special teamer before he could work his way into a starting role, he would not have made the team because of a rule change like this. So it will have a significant impact, even if you're of the belief that those last 3 guys on the roster don't matter.
I just hope in general that nothing is done to hurt the potential of Canadians in the future, because right now, JC, I think you would agree, we are either starting in the middle of or just beginning the golden era of Canadians in football. We've never had more starring, dare I say, in the NFL. We've never had more starring in the NCAA. We've never had more athletes going from U Sports to the NFL, and obviously from the NCAA and U Sports sprinkling in and being major contributors in various ways in the CFL. So I don't think there needs to be a push here to reduce the amount of Canadians on rosters. And your John Cornish example is a great one. And there's many others like it. Let's say a guy like Andrew Harris. In the future, if there's somebody who's a star in the Canadian Junior Football League, but you have these Americans who a lot of the coaches in the CFL, like it or not, view as better than Canadians, you could argue a guy like Harris maybe never gets a chance the route that he took to get to the CFL. Logan Ferland comes to mind as well, a guy that was in the Canadian Junior Football League and now is starting for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So I certainly think that you do not need to aid rosters in this way. And again, it goes back to the point that I've been making, it seems like for a while now, that the issue is not the game. The issue is not the talent level in the CFL. It's the business. The business people need to go out and put in the work and get more bums in seats, more revenue in, so that the league can grow. The issue is not, in this example, the amount of Canadians playing every game day on CFL rosters.
And even from the perspective from which the team or the people that are pushing for this are approaching it, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, Justin. Not a single lick of sense. First of all, if you truly believe that Canadian talent is inferior, which I can debate you on, but let's go with that premise for right now, which I wrote an article on. If you believe that, well, having Canadians on the field provides you with mismatches. It provides you with the opportunity to make big plays, to have that more exciting game that you're always talking about. The fact of the matter is, bringing more average Americans in doesn't give you that chance. Right now, there's not very much of a talent disparity from the top of the CFL to the bottom of the CFL, Canadians included. It's a very tight window. And when you want exciting football games, you need a big talent disparity. You need big time stars against guys who are not going to be hanging around very long. And that window is shrunk in the CFL in large part because the NFL has become a different league and has taken a lot of that top level talent that used to come to the CFL for a variety of reasons that weren't really football related, whether they were tweener pass rushers or black quarterbacks or short quarterbacks or undersized slot receivers. All those guys that the CFL used to feast on and have such productivity with are going to the NFL these days. So the top level talent just isn't the same. And because the bottom has risen at the same time, you've got this very compact, tightly knit group of talent here where everyone's pretty equal, even your bottom level Canadians. And so there's not a lot of opportunity for these big breakaway splash plays that we've become used to. So I don't see the logic in removing more opportunities for those. But even to go further, I mean, the XFL and the USFL, whether you think they'll last or not, exist right now, and they will for at least another year. We can safely say that because the XFL is coming out next year. So you've got at least 2 years of this problem. Why? When two leagues are going to be taking all of this average American talent, would you, as the Canadian Football League, want to make yourself more reliant on bottom of the roster American guys? That makes zero sense. It's a bad plan because those guys are going to want to go to the USFL and the XFL. Where you can get an advantage is with those quality Canadian players that you can attract, stay closer to home, pay better, and that brings your league up. So it just doesn't make sense to me on any perspective.
Totally agree. And some people will argue on the other side, JC, that a lot of the Canadians might not develop into stars in the league, but if they're not given that chance, you're never going to have a John Cornish, an Andrew Harris, an Andy Fantuz, and on down the list. Some of the star Canadian players that maybe not right from the jump were great in this league, took a little bit of time, figured out the league, the nuances, how to be a professional, and then got to that star level. And when those Canadians become stars, they are on a level that connects with a community that is just not the same as an American. I don't care if it's Cody Fajardo as the franchise quarterback for the Rough Riders or Darian Duran or whoever else it might be. When you're a Canadian star, like let's say Andrew Harris playing for your hometown team in Winnipeg, you cannot beat that. So you need to have those opportunities for Canadians. And I definitely think the talent is there for more of these guys to come along in the future and develop into stars. But if we take away those chances, then you're going to reduce that. And as you said, you have a couple of leagues right now who are going to take even more American talent off the roster. If you talk to CFL personnel men, they'll first and foremost talk about how the expansion of the NFL practice rosters have taken a number of potential stars away from the CFL. I believe it went from 10 to 12, and it might even be at 16 now after the COVID years that the NFL played with. So you're talking about literally hundreds of players that usually would have ended up in the CFL as potential American stars, but now there's competition not only for the players that are going to be left off NFL teams after those expanded practice rosters, but there's going to be hundreds of other players that are going to be playing in the XFL, that are going to be playing in the USFL, that some people might argue could have been in the CFL. So I think you need to go the other way, I would argue, and open up the door for more Canadians. We've seen the most successful teams in recent years, gets talked about all the time. How good is your Canadian depth and your quarterback? Those are the two key things that every general manager, personnel man, head coach, anything in this league knows that you need to have on your team to be competitive. So let's give more opportunities. We've oftentimes seen the highest quality teams in the league start more than the 7 required Canadians. We've finally, JC, gotten to the point where quarterback actually counts towards the ratio. So we're moving in a positive direction. The Canadian talent has never been better, but yet the Canadian Football League wants to reduce positions on rosters for Canadians. I just can't comprehend why they feel like that would be a smart idea. I'd like for someone to enlighten me the other way.
And there are people around the league who say, fans don't engage with these bottom of the roster Canadians. Now, I take issue with that because I think some of these guys, the fullbacks, the special team stars of the world, in my experience, become some of the most embedded members of the community, fan favorites, a lot of them, and are actually attracting more attention than some of the American stars that come or go. But even if you have that belief that fans don't care about the bottom of the roster guys, they don't know their names, so why not bring in a guy from Ohio State? Well, the fact of the matter is they won't care about the guy from Ohio State either. Talk to the average guy on the street who follows the NFL because he has a fantasy team. Talk to him about his favorite team. Can he name more than 7 starters? Maybe he gets to 10. He can't name the whole starting roster. And that's for the NFL. That's where everyone's supposed to be the greatest talent in the world, right? People don't care about the bottom of the roster no matter what sport they watch, unless you're an avid fan who's already invested and is invested in the bottom of the roster now. So you're not getting that added engagement with the casual viewer that you think you are by bringing in these guys that they can't tell apart from a kid from Acadia anyway. So why are you taking away an opportunity for a Canadian job?
And those bottom of the roster guys are not going to have family and friends traveling up to the games as much as Canadians who would be closer to those stadiums. So I'm not saying you want to rely on that for revenue, but the small things could help in this instance. And again, we're open to hearing the higher ups in the CFL present their argument as to why this is a smart idea. But again, it's going to infuriate the core fan base of the league. And JC, I think you and I agree on this topic going over it, that it's not going to necessarily help the CFL out in its goal to entice that generation it's lost and younger fans to tune in to the CFL.